안녕하십니까. 2020 글로벌 코리아
Good
박람회 컨퍼런스
afternoon.
세션 중 한국의
Welcome
교통 인프라
to the
분야에
session on
진행을
Korea's
맡은
transportation
한국교통연구원
infrastructure.
글로벌 교통연구본부장 이상민입니다.
My name is
반갑습니다.
Isang-min of the Korea Transport Institute.
오늘 약 100분 동안 진행될
For about
한국의
100
교통 인프라
minutes,
분야
we will be
세션에서는
conducting the
네 가지
session
부분,
on
공항,
Korea's
철도,
transportation
도로,
infrastructure
그리고
covering
스마트
road,
모빌리티 분야에
railway,
대해서
airport, and
주요
smart
관계
mobility.
기관의
We
전문가분들을
will
모시고
invite
말씀을
experts
듣고
from
함께
relevant
토론하는
organizations
시간을
to
가질
listen to their
예정입니다.
presentations, followed by
본격적인
discussion.
발표와 토론에 앞서
Before we go into the
한국교통연구원
presentation, we would
오재학
like to
원장님을
invite
모시고
President Oh
개회사
Jae-hak of the
말씀을
Korea
듣도록 하겠습니다.
Transport Institute
오재학
for his
원장님을
opening
무대로
remarks.
모시겠습니다.
Let us invite President Oh to the stage.
네, 여러분 반갑습니다.
Good afternoon, ladies and
오늘
gentlemen.
아침부터
Starting from this
2020
morning, we're having this
박람회
2020 Global Korea
개막식을 아주
Convention.
성대하게 잘 했어요.
The opening
아주
ceremony
중요하신
was
분들도
very
많이 오시고
successful with many
아주 흥미
VIPs in
있는
attendance.
그런
And
행사가
the opening
됐던 것
ceremony
같습니다.
included many
오늘
interesting
오후
discussions
첫
and
번째 날
features.
첫 번째 이제
This is day
세션인 것
2
같습니다.
of the
저희들이.
Global
그래서
Korea Convention,
오후에
and it is the second session
한국의
following the
교통
opening
인프라
ceremony.
그 분야 인프라 협력 분야를 가지고
In this session, we're going to discuss transportation infrastructure of Korea. This session is hosted by the Korea Transport Institute, and we have Incheon International Airport Corporation, the Korail, and Korea Express Corporation that have been organizing this session together. So it is indeed a very meaningful session. As you may know, this session is being broadcast live. So there are those who are watching this session online, and there are people who are here on site. Thank you very much for your participation. As you may know, the transport infrastructure in Korea is well recognized, especially the World Bank and ADB and OECD are very interested in how Korea was able to build excellent and high-quality transportation infrastructure in Korea in such a short period of time. So I often receive questions about this. As you listen to these presentations, you will be able to better understand the secrets or success factors behind our transportation infrastructure. There may be many important recipes, but at the same time, we have been able to accumulate a lot of knowledge and expertise and know-how, and we are here to share our experiences and knowledge with those who are in need for such expertise. I believe that's the purpose of this session. For the next 100 minutes, there will be 4 presentations. And after all the presentations are delivered, if you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand, and this will contribute to our discussion session. Once again, thank you very much for joining us for the session on transportation infrastructure of Korea as part of the Global Korea Convention 2020. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Oh Jae-hak, for your opening remarks covering the meaning of this session as well as the contents to be covered. Let us now go on to the 4 presentations followed by 4 designated discussants. The first presentation will be on airports. It will be presented by the Incheon International Airport Corporation, Ms. Hong So-yeon of the Smart Disease Control Team. Your presentation, please.
안녕하세요.
Good afternoon. As have been introduced, I am leading the Smart Disease Control Team at the International Airport
인천공항이 코로나
Corporation,
팬데믹 상황에 어떻게 대응해왔는지,
I would like to
그리고
share
글로벌
with you
공항과
how the
비교해서 무엇이
Incheon
차별화되어
International
있는지,
Airport
그리고
has
앞으로
conducted
백신과
disease
치료제가
control
보급되고
during
점진적으로 항공수
COVID-19,
회복이
how we are
예상되는 위드
differentiated
코로나 시대에
from
대비해서
other
무엇을
airports,
준비하고
and
있고
what
준비해야
are we
하는지입니다.
preparing for the future where we are living with
공항
COVID-19.
방역의 개념은 금방 코로나
The
사태
concept
전후로 완전히
of disease
바뀌었습니다.
control
코로나
has completely
이전에는
changed
해외
before
오염 국가에서
COVID-19 and
전염병이
after
유입되는 것을
COVID-19.
방지하고
Before
방지하는 입국 방역
COVID-19,
위주였고요.
it was
또
mostly
오염
about
국가에서 입국하는
quarantine
여객들의
to
자발적인
keep
신고에
disease out, and
의존했었습니다.
it was
이에 비해
mainly
코로나
based on
이후에는요,
voluntary
안전한
disclosure by the
여행을 보장할 수
passengers.
있는 간편
But
확산
after
방지 등의 모든
COVID-19,
활동을
it is
포함하게
all
되었습니다.
activities to
결국은 출국
prevent the
방역의 개념이 처음으로
spread
등장하게
of
됐고요.
disease.
이에 따라
And so
방역에
that is
있어서
why we have
공항과
come up with the
항공사의
concept
역할이
of
중대가
smart
되었습니다.
disease control,
또한 현재
and it calls for the
방역이 공항
heightened role
경쟁력을
of
결정하는 데
airline
중요한 요소로
companies and
작용하게
airports
되었습니다.
themselves.
인천공항은 코로나
At the
이전에는
Incheon
연간
International
7천만 명
Airport,
이용하는
we used to
국가 최대
have
관문으로
70
해외
million
전염병이
people
유입되는 것을
using
막는
the
방역의
airport,
최전선 역할을
and so it was the
수행해왔습니다.
gateway into Korea, and
우리나라는
therefore the
금방 코로나
first
사태에
gate
100%
to
국경을
preventing disease
폐쇄하는
control.
정책을 추진하는 대신에
Instead
효율적이고
of
안전한
locking
방역
down
프로세스를
our
도입해서
borders, we
바이러스
have
유입을
introduced
차단함과
effective
동시에 경제적 피해를
processes for
최소화하는
disease
정책을
control
채택을
so
했습니다.
that we can keep
인천공항
the
이러한
disease
국가
out while
정책을
maintaining
100% 지원을
economic
하기 위해서
interests.
노력을
And
해왔고요.
we have conducted efforts to finance various
올해 1월
activities
20일에
related
국내
to
첫
this.
확진자가 발생하면서
On
감염병
January
위기 정보가
21st,
주의
the
단계로
first
설명되었습니다.
confirmed case
인천공항은 이에 맞춰
of
선제적으로
COVID-19 was found in
비상대책
Korea.
가동하였습니다.
We
또한 3월
started to operate an
26일에는 공기업
emergency
최초로
team.
비상 경영을
In
선포하고
March, for the
출국
first time
영역
as a
대상으로
government-run
3단계
corporation,
공항
we
산업
announced
생태계의
that we will go into
피해
emergency
방지를
management.
위해서 피해 최소화를 위한 대책을
We started to
마련하였습니다.
come up with strategies to minimize the damage
하지만
from
이러한 노력에도
COVID-19.
불구하고
But despite
코로나가
these efforts,
장기화되면서
we had
감염으로
prolonged
우려와 여행 후
infections
자가
of
격리에 대한 부담
COVID-19.
때문에
And so
여행
because
심리가
of
많이
the burden
위축이
of
되었습니다. 이에 따라서
self-quarantine
항공산업
after
생태계
travel,
또한
we have
최대 위기를
seen
맞게
a
되었습니다.
sharp drop in
따라서
the number of passengers,
금방 코로나
which has
사태가
led to a
완전히
crisis for
해결될
both
때까지
airports and
공항
airline
당국이
companies.
이
And
수요
so
회복 및
until the end
그리고
of
항공산업
COVID-19,
생태계가 지속될
it
수
seems
있도록
that
적극적인 위기
it will be
극복
very
대책을
difficult to
마련할
maintain our
필요성이
ecosystem. So we
제기되었습니다.
need active planning to make sure that we can maintain the
안전한 여행에 대한 요구가
airline
증가하고
ecosystem.
방역이 공항 운영 수준을 결정하는 중요한 요소로
We
부각되고
believe
있는
that
현재
disease
시점에
control is very
인천공항은
important in
혁신을
deciding
기반으로
the
한 스마트 방역
operation
추진을 통해서
of
기존 대응
airports,
체계의 한계를
and so
극복하고자 노력을
we are
하고
making
있습니다.
efforts to overcome
앞에서
the limitations
말씀드렸다시피
in
기존의
existing disease
검역은 입국
control
검역
measures.
위주였고
Most of the
입국하는
quarantine
여객들의
was
자발적인
focused
신고에
on
의존했습니다.
quarantine
그렇기
of
때문에
those coming
취약점이
into the
발생할
country,
수밖에
and it
없었는데
was based
이러한 부분에
on
대해서
mostly
인천공항은
voluntary
첨단
disclosure
기술을
of
기반으로 한
diseases.
출입국 안심
And so there
프로세스를
are
도입해서
limitations, but
극복하고자
by
노력하고
introducing a
있습니다.
smart system,
또한 방역 주체
we are
간의
trying to
정보
overcome
공유가
limitations.
미비해서
In the
개별적으로
past,
대응하는 기율이
it was
발생하기도
difficult to
했는데요.
respond
앞으로는
together with
유인사자
other
발생 시
airline companies
정보를
and
서로
airports.
방역
But
주체와
now we
공유해서
have a
빈틈없는
system
방역
to
체계를
share
운영하고자
information
합니다.
so that we can have
또한
watertight
현재 입국 시
quarantine
코로나 음성
systems.
확인서 의무 제출을 요구하는 국가가 증가하고
There are many
있습니다.
countries that
결국은
ask
출국
for
프로세스에
a
공항
document
확인
to
절차가
prove that
추가됐다고
you
보시면
are
되겠는데요.
proven
이에 따라서
COVID-19
여객분들이 해외
negative,
출국하기
and
이전에
so
코로나 음성
we
확인을 위해서
have
병원을
a
방문하셔서 검사를
platform
받고
where
서류를 발급받고 이러한 번거로운 절차를
we are
거치고
able to
계십니다.
provide
따라서
convenient
이러한 모든
services to the
절차를
passengers
공항에서 월스탑으로
so that
지원하기
all
위한
of the
공항
COVID-19
설치를
testing and the
설치
results
필요성도
and
제기됐습니다.
documentation could be done at a
저희가
one-stop
생각하는
station
스마트 공항
at the
방역
airport.
모델은요.
The
ICT와
smart
진단
disease
기술을
control
공항의 출입국
model at
프로세스와
airports that we
융합해서
envision is
항공
the
여행의
combination
안전성과
of
신뢰성을
ICT with the
확보하며
existing
원스톱 방역
quarantine
모델을
system
구축하는
so that we
것입니다.
have a one-stop
새
quarantine
방역 모델
system.
기준의 3T
We have
프로세스를
3T
인천공항에
processes
IT 시스템과
for the
시설
disease
그리고
control in
공항
Korea,
운영
and we
노하우를
wish to
총괄적으로 지원하는
incorporate
체계를
the three
마련하는
T's
것을
into the
의미합니다.
existing system that we have at our airports.
인천공항은 아태지역 공항
The
최초로
Incheon
세계공항
International
공항
Airport
협의회 공항 방역 모델을
was
취득했습니다.
certified to be AHA by the ACI for the first time in Asia-Pacific region, which means that we have been proven to have an excellent disease control system. As we have mentioned before you go abroad, many countries are asking that you present them with a certification that you have been tested and have been proven to be negative. And so, at the Frankfurt International Airport, the airport corporation, airline company, and a pharmaceutical company actually cooperates together to have a result in 3 hours. And the results are provided online. The Vienna International Airport provides a similar service. In Japan, as you're well aware, at the Narita International Airport, rather than using a swab that swabs the nose, they actually use saliva, and that actually is an easier way to conduct testing, and so it does not call for the intervention of an expert. And when people leave the Narita International Airport, they are able to utilize a system that can provide the testing results in 3 to 7 hours. The cost for this type of service is about 39,000 yen. At the international airport, we also have a check-in process with added quarantine measures, and so that is why we are planning a diagnostic center at the international airport, and currently we are in the procedure to conduct screening at the airport, but the actual test results will be brought in from the outside. But in January, we believe that we will be able to bring in the testing into the airport, and so that means that we can shorten the time that it takes to get the results to 4 months. If the PCR test, which is quite rapid, is introduced in Korea, that would mean that we can shorten the time again to 2 hours. The screening will be for those who are traveling abroad. We will not be testing those with symptoms. The cost of the testing will be based on the government set levels. We do have hope because we hear news of vaccinations being developed, and so if vaccination starts early next year, we will see an increase in the number of airline passengers. But many people will be waiting for vaccines, and until then, and until we have collective immunity, then it will take some time. And so we believe that there will be a gradual deregulation of self-quarantine. So for the next year or two, we will need to have promotional programs for us to recover travels, and we need to have measures that are appropriate for the with COVID-19 era. During the next 1 to 2 years until we see the recovery, then we need to have, for example, travel bubbles. If we introduce travel bubbles, what would be some appropriate regions to introduce travel bubbles? We need to take a look at the disease control level and the number of confirmed cases in the target country, as well as the potential demand for travel. If we have had any experience with conventions in the past, and if there are a past record of high number of travelers, then those countries would be the first that would be targeted as a travel bubble partner. So we believe that we will introduce an end-to-end program for the travel bubble partners, and in introducing travel bubbles, the biggest hindrance is the concern that that type of travel will bring in diseases from overseas. So therefore, we will need to conduct screening upon arrival at the airport to make
통해서
sure that
트래블
those
버블
who are coming in
운영이
do not have
안전하다는 게
the
데이터로 증명이 된다
coronavirus.
그러면
And if we're
국민들의
able to
신뢰성도
conduct this
확장되고
and prove
방역
with
당국의
figures
동기화도 불식시키면서
that travel bubbles will
자연스럽게
not
트래블
lead to
버블
the
프로그램이
increase of the
확대될 수 있는
influx of
그런 환경이
diseases,
조성될
then
것으로
we believe that
예상되고
we can
있습니다.
win the trust of the public and travel will naturally
트래블
increase.
버블을 지원하기 위한 검사를
In order
시행하기
to
위해서는
support travel
당국은
bubbles, we would need
대량으로
to have
신속하게
rapid
코로나
testing.
검사를
We would
공항에서
need to
진행을 할 수
have
있어야
rapid
됩니다.
testing on
하지만
massive
현재
scales at the airport. But
시중에서
as of
이제
now,
확진용으로 하고 있는 PCR 검사의
the
같은
PCL
경우에는
test
초기에
that is
검출이
currently being
가능하고
used
단연 초기에
in
검출이
Korea
가능하고 정확도도 매우 높지만
has great
검출
merits,
자체가
such as the
어렵고
high
그리고
accuracy,
시간도 오래
but
걸리기
the
때문에
screening
현장
itself is
검사로는
difficult
적합한
and it
것이
takes a
아닙니다.
long
그래서
time, so it may
응급실에서
not be
사용하는
appropriate
응급처리용
for
PCR이나
the
생활 이용 타입
airport.
검사 같은
So we
방식이
may need to use
국내에서
rapid
빠른 시간
PCR that is
내에
being used in
승인을
emergency
받아야
rooms
된다고 생각을
as
하고
well
있고요.
as
그리고
testing using
항원 검사의
saliva.
경우에도 초기 검출이
And
불가능하고
for
정확도가
the
약간은
other
떨어지지만
alternative
15분 내에
testing,
검사가
it
완료될 수
may
있다는
not
장점이
be
있기
accurate
때문에
as the
이러한
PCL that is
검사도
currently being
보조적으로
used,
같이
but
사용할
it
수
could be
있다라고
used as a
생각하고 있습니다.
supplementary measure.
그래서 공항에서
And
하는
so
검사 같은 경우는
the
안전한
testing
항공
at the
이동을
airport
지원하기 위한
are
검사이기
testing
때문에
solely to
저희가
support
그
the
100%
safe
정확한
use of
검사보다는
airlines. And
여행
so
시기에 따라서
depending
복합적으로
on the
다양한
period
검사
of
방식을 조합해서
travel, we would
검사를
need to
시행함으로써
utilize
정확도를
different
올려갈 수
testing
있다라고
methods to
생각합니다.
increase the accuracy of the results.
트래블 버블 확대를 위해서 디지털
To
건강
expand the
요건을
travel
도입하는
bubble,
움직임도
there
있는데요.
is a movement to
세계
introduce
공동
digital
포럼에서
health
개발한 커먼 패스
passports.
같은 경우 홍콩과
The
싱가포르,
World
런던,
Economic
롱,
Forum
부산에서
has
시범
actually
도입을
introduced a
시작을
common
시범 운영을
pass
시작을
that
했고요.
is
사실
basically
이
a
서비스 같은
universal health
경우에
passport.
항체 보유 여부나
This
코로나
service
검사 결과나
actually
민감 정보를 다루고 있기 때문에 신뢰성 확보가 매우
uses
중요하고
information
그리고
that is quite
결국은
sensitive, such as
방역
whether or
당국에서
not a
이것을
person has
해소하게
a
사용할
certain
수 있는
virus
부분이기 때문에
or that if the
정부가
person has such
나서야
certain
되고 있고요.
antibodies. And so
인천공항도
since
저희
it deals with very
검색센터와
sensitive
연계해서 여러 가지
information,
디지털
it
서비스를
should be
준비하고
issued
있습니다.
by the government and
모바일 앱을
managed by the
통해서 검사
government.
결과를
The Incheon
전송하고 그리고
International Airport is
혹시라도
preparing to
확진이
conduct
되실
such a
수도 있기
service.
때문에 역학조사
And we
지원하기
hope that we
위해서
could have a
확진
mobile
시가
app.
증가하는 추적하는
And
서비스도
if some
준비를
people
하고 있습니다.
are
또한
proven to be a
검사
confirmed
센터를
case of a
재방문해서
certain
서류를
disease,
또
then we would
발급하는
actually
부분에
use
이동
this app
동선상에
to
이제
track
동선
their
말표를
travel
동선
routes.
최적화를 위한
And so
무인 서류
we
발급
need to
및
also
설치
have
이제 계획을
unmanned
검토하고 있습니다.
kiosks for the issuance
제가
of
말씀드릴
documentation
내용은
so that
여기까지고요.
the
어쨌든 그 항공
services can be
산업이
provided
오간에 많은
conveniently to the
힘든 시기를
passengers.
겪었는데
The
2년째
industry
이제
surrounding
우리가
airports has gone through various difficulties throughout the year, but we hang our hopes on the news of vaccinations, and we hope that the Incheon International Airport can provide appropriate services for the with COVID-19 era. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation on the K Airport Disease Control Model. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Next, we will hear a presentation on smart mobility in implementing smart cities. We will invite Mr. Kim Tae-hyung, team leader of the Smart City Transport Research at the Korea Transport Institute. Good afternoon. As introduced, I am Kim Tae-hyung, working at the Korea Transport Institute. These days, smart city is a global agenda. Many countries are implementing smart city projects and initiatives, and in Korea as well, the Korean government has implemented various measures to establish smart cities. What I'm going to discuss in my presentation is that while there are many aspects of smart city implementation, I'm going to zoom in on to smart mobility because it provides mobility services for the citizens. And this is also going to create value for the citizens. Therefore, in my presentation, I'm going to discuss how we need to build smart mobility as part of smart city implementation. First of all, I'm going to discuss the current status of smart city and smart mobility Globally, as I mentioned, there are many smart city and smart mobility projects, but there's no unified definition of what smart city is and what smart mobility is. So I'm going to touch upon this topic. And then, in order to build a smart mobility infrastructure, what do we need to do? What direction do we need to take? And then I will conclude with some policy recommendations. Today, there are more than 4,000 smart city projects that are underway globally. You can see that many countries and many cities are pursuing smart city projects depending on their goals and visions. According to our survey, in Korea as well, we have about 80 different local governments and municipalities. They have dedicated teams for smart city implementation. And in these organizations, they are carrying out a variety of projects. In addition, many smart city-related services are already available. For instance, there are autonomous driving shuttles, and other autonomous driving services are either offered on a commercial scale or on a pilot scale, and many micro-mobility services for individual users are available as well. And smart parking and smart pedestrian crossing and other smart mobility services are being developed or offered globally. They are either on a full commercial scale or on a pilot basis. In Korea as well, there have been many efforts at the government level to promote smart city. So the government has announced a smart city strategy and a comprehensive plan. So in 2018, the comprehensive plan for smart city implementation was announced, and the third smart city comprehensive plan was announced in July 2019. Unlike other previous projects or services, the comprehensive plan includes very specific tasks to be implemented and what technology solutions need to be applied and what kinds of collaborations are needed among the different stakeholders. So as I explained, there is a growing interest in smart city and smart mobility implementation all around the world. However, when you conduct a survey on what is going on, you can find that there's a lack of unified understanding of what smart city is and what smart mobility is. There are many different countries and many different cities that have different visions and different understanding of smart city and smart mobility. Therefore, there are differences in terms of their definitions. As a result, there's a lack of clear understanding or definition of smart mobility, which is a core part of smart city implementation. And secondly, Korea, as well as in many other countries, when they are carrying out smart city and smart mobility projects, they often find that there is a lack of a comprehensive strategy for smart city and smart mobility, and there are not many clear guidelines in implementing smart city solutions. In addition, in the past, for several decades, we pursued ITS and U-City projects, but they were mainly for the benefit of the managers and operators. But now we're shifting to smart mobility and smart city, where we need to build mobility services that cater to the needs of the users, and this is something that is not provided yet. So now, as we are pursuing smart city and smart mobility services, we need to make sure that these services are in line with the needs of the users. But in reality, many of the so-called smart mobility services are a continuation of ITS or U-City solutions. And in some other cases, fourth industrial revolution related technology is being applied. And there are services that users will experience and use. But unfortunately, there is not enough legal or regulatory framework that can govern smart mobility solutions and services. And so these are the areas that need to be improved. Now, first of all, how can we establish smart city and smart mobility in a successful manner. Before we talk about the details of implementing smart city and smart mobility solutions, we first need to have a clear understanding and a definition of smart city and smart mobility. As I said, in many countries there are smart city and smart mobility projects, but they may have different objectives and different directions. Likewise, in Korea, we need to develop a clear definition of smart city and smart mobility that cater to the specific needs of the Korean population and the Korean situation. And that means that we need to put in place a clear definition of smart city and smart mobility. Now, what we did was to gather all kinds of definitions out there. There are more than 120 definitions of smart city globally. And by examining these definitions, we were able to select 40 smart city related keywords, and then they were grouped in 8 different categories. As you can see here on the slide, these are the keywords that need to be incorporated in smart city projects. These need to be for the benefit of citizens, and they also have to be inclusive, and they need to promote local development and social integration. So these were the keywords that need to be included in the definition of smart city. Moving on to smart mobility. We applied the same methodology to analyze the definitions of smart city, and we found 30 different definitions of smart mobility around the world. We did some categorization and analysis, and we were able to extract 5 keywords. First of all, smart mobility is about a paradigm shift, and it is based on automation and integration. And smart mobility is based on advanced technology to offer mobility services, and it will be based on ICT and telecommunications technology. And smart mobility has to be inclusive, and it has to contribute to improving the quality of life of people. And we also have to make sure that smart mobility will promote social integration and cohesion. So after these analyses, we did some work on developing various directions and strategies for smart mobility implementation in Korea. And the first step would be, as you can see here, we should evaluate the level of mobility by city and by region. And depending on the circumstances of the local communities, we would have to set up strategies for smart mobility. Globally, there are many projects underway, and in Korea, many local governments are pursuing smart mobility solutions. They seem to focus a lot on applying advanced technology, while there is not enough consideration of the physical and digital infrastructure. But in order for smart mobility projects to be successful, they need to be carried out in consideration of the local situations. But unfortunately, many of the ongoing projects seem to try to incorporate all the available technology in one set. But we should be able to evaluate the level of mobility at first, in the beginning. And after assessing the level of mobility in a city, they can prioritize, they can put priority on certain areas. And then depending on their expectations, they will develop social mobility services that will cater to the local needs. So this should be the first principle in carrying out smart mobility solutions and projects. So together with World Bank, we are currently developing the smart mobility service guidelines for developing countries. And once again, these guidelines mention that the local situations, including the local transportation infrastructure and other physical infrastructure, have to be considered. And so we're developing the guidelines for this. For instance, in Vietnam, we can apply these guidelines in setting up the vision and the specific goals, and then offer a business model that can be applied in Vietnam. In addition, we need to engage citizens in building smart mobility services. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, smart mobility services have to be the kinds of services that customers or users want. In the past, ITS or UCT projects were not carried out in that direction. But now, in promoting smart mobility today, we need to involve our citizens so that we can develop solutions that our users, our citizens really want. And this is the kind of approach that we need to take. First, we need to identify the kinds of services that citizens want, and by implementing them, the citizens can enjoy these convenience. In Busan or in Seoul, we may apply this methodology in building a smart mobility framework. There are many different smart mobility services, and we need to check whether citizens want these kinds of services. And in order to test that, we can build smart mobility living labs in these cities. And then citizens will participate in this project to experience these services first, and then they will provide us with feedback, and then we can improve the smart mobility services again. So that's what we're doing right now as well. In addition, we should be able to integrate smart mobility data and share them with relevant stakeholders. Because what we really want is to provide smart mobility that is so convenient that citizens would give up on driving their own cars and use smart mobility services. In order to ensure that, we should be able to utilize all the available data that is generated in that city. And this big data and data analysis will help enhance smart mobility services for the users. And to do so, we need a smart mobility platform on which data will be generated and collected and analyzed. And based on this integrated platform, we can offer more convenient services. Currently, in the pilot city as well as in the smart city R&D, this data platform construction is a key project. And at our institute, we're providing all the necessary support. And to provide such smart mobility services, we need a smart mobility governance framework. When you think about it, mobility is a combination of public and private services. Therefore, there are many different stakeholders involved in providing smart mobility. And to manage all these relationships, we need a smart mobility governance framework. To provide effective smart mobility services from the very beginning to the end, the smart mobility governance framework has to be effectively operated. Currently, in the smart city, pilot city, and also in Daegu City, we are implementing this framework. And finally, what we need is the legal and regulatory framework that can regulate the mobility. For instance, we may need to apply the regulation sandbox, and in order to make sure that all the smart mobility services are beneficial, we should be able to reform our regulations. Some of the regulations will need to be lifted, and some legal and other frameworks will need to be updated and revised. Now, in conclusion, I'd like to make some policy recommendations. As I mentioned, to provide successful and beneficial smart mobility services, we need to take into account all the local characteristics. And smart city and smart mobility solutions have to be created and built in consideration of these local aspects. And then we need a governance framework and the legal framework. And in providing and developing and providing services. There may be technological aspects as well, including the platform and data. And only when these elements are all ready, we will be able to create a smart city and implement the smart mobility services for the people. And also, we have to make sure that smart mobility and the entire system is in a sustainable manner. Thank you.
최근에 미래 교통에 대응
Recently,
방향으로 스마트
in
시티,
responding to
스마트
future
모빌리티,
transportation, smart city, smart mobility, autonomous driving, and related research is being conducted actively. And as part of that, smart mobility and smart city research is conducted here at the Korea Transport Institute. And Dr. Kim, thank you very much for your presentation.
Next, we would like to invite Mr. Park Do-ho of Korail to listen to his presentation on the rail system. His presentation is titled The Role and Task of High-Speed Railway as an Inter-Regional Connection Transportation.
네, 안녕하십니까.
Good afternoon.
지역 간선 중추 교통
I would like to take this opportunity to talk about the role and tasks of high-speed railway as the core transportation means to connect regions.
저희 대한민국의 철도는
Well, the railway in the Republic of Korea is in itself the history of Korea. And so I would like to talk about the past, present, and future of Korea's railroad. So this is the path that the Korean rail went through. In June of 1894, we first started the connection between 제물포 and 노량진. And in 2018,
1894년 6월 28일 날
we
조선 공무임은 산하에
have
국국이 개창된 사실에 근거해서 철도의 날을
redesignated the day of the rail to June 28th to commemorate the first operation. In 1974, we first started the subway station for the capital area. We actually have 3.2 million passengers per day. And for the high-speed railway, we opened its service in 2004. This is the fifth high-speed railway service that was opened. And in 2002, we actually changed our name to Korail. From 2007, because we opened the KTX line in Sancheon in 2008, we started the preparations in 2007, and in 2010 we launched the second phase of the Gyeongbu Railway. In 2015 we opened the Honam Railway, and in 2015 again, we actually achieved the 11th anniversary as well as 500 million passengers in total. Currently, we have 6 million passengers in total. As of the end of 2017, we opened the KTX line connecting Seoul with Gangneung, and in 2018, we hosted the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, and during the Olympic period, we actually conducted 33% of the transportation demand using the railway, and we actually received a presidential plaque of appreciation, and we have been complimented by the IOC members. At that time, we had great inter-Korean relations, and so we actually had a field visit for the connection between the two Koreas, and we have actually conducted the groundbreaking ceremony. Through such efforts, you can see that compared to 2004, the number of passengers on our interregional routes have increased by 25.5%, But despite the growth of the railway, we did go through some tragic accidents. There was the accident in the Gwangmyeong station in 2011, the accident in Daegu in 2013, and we also had the Gangneung KTX accident in 2018. From Korail's perspective, this still leaves us with quite a bit of homework on our hands. And based on these accidents, we are focused on prioritizing safety as our management goal, and we also hope to inspire our passengers. We wish to become a smart railway trusted by the people. To achieve this goal, we have conducted various efforts. First, we have expanded the budget for smart safety so that we can take care of any potential risks to danger. Based on data, we conduct risk management so that we can establish and advance the safety management system. The budget has been increased by threefold for safety, and currently it stands at 8.7 trillion won. So it is quite a large budget for safety. Furthermore, we also wish to conduct preemptive risk management. So our emergency drill training has been strengthened to be very close to the heart of the railway. We wish to become passenger-centered in our danger management. And so we have actually been able to reduce the number of accidents by about 16%. And so we wish to win the trust of our passengers so they will feel safe using our railway. And here you could see various accidents, and concerning this, we have been able to reduce passenger-related accidents by 37% so that we could prioritize the safety of our passengers. And second is service. We wish to become a railway service that wins the heart of our customers. Let's take a look at some of our efforts. We have been able to make sure that we keep the time of our customers with the world's top-level management. Our on-time operation is at 99.7%. In France, I understand that it's actually at 89%, so it's considerably higher than France, and you can see that it's close to 100%. We also utilize the smart transportation platform for the convenience of our customers. We have Wi-Fi available for all stations and inside the trains so that passengers can be provided with accurate and convenient services. We introduced Zero Pay for the first time as a government-owned company, and so we have about 1,000 stores where Zero Pay can be used related to the railway. We also operate the Korail Talk. Through the time-saving service that we operate, you are able to change your ticket to the next available train rather than the train that you have reserved. Many customers are utilizing the time-serving service. The number of passengers that actually issue their tickets on their own using their mobile platform is actually 16% higher than it used to be in 2015, recording 81.2%. Next, let's take a look at cooperation with growth through the railway. We actually wish to grow with SMEs, and so that is why we utilize 84% of our purchasing from SMEs.
This is so that we could have co-prosperity and co-growth with our SMEs.
또 함께 발전하고 공정하게 거래하기 위해서
In order to have fair trade,
여기 매장이나
when we operate stores at railway stations, we always make sure that we are in coexistence with SMEs. You will be able to find various stores that display SME products at our stations. We also work with about 200 suppliers, and so we actually host large-scale exhibitions with our partners so that we can grow together. Through the platform that we have, we support the growth of SMEs, and we also have a system to share the profits with SMEs. Last but not least, let's take a look at the future of Korail. We wish to become an eco-friendly railroad. First, we believe that the same-day travel available to railways would be expanded. So we wish to become effective and competitive railway that leads local development, and safe and convenient railway. According to the third national plan for railways, we have 6 directions for the development of railway, and we will continue to expand the same-day travel area using the railway. And according to these plans, we are looking for the introduction of new trains, especially trains that can go up to the speed of 320 kilometers per hour. We actually have 280 trains that can go at this speed, and the quasi-high-speed trains that can go up to 260 kilometers per hour. We will add about 200 trains of that. We will also add trains that can travel at the speed of 150 kilometers per hour, and they will be operated as regular trains, and we will introduce 450 trains that can go up to 150 kilometers per year. So these additional trains will be purchased at about 3 trillion won, and we will continue to introduce them gradually throughout the next several years so that we can actually switch out all of the old trains. And concerning the quasi-KTX routes, we will be introducing the 260 kilometers per hour trains. According to this third national railway plan, we will be expanding the coverage of our railway from 3,888 kilometers to 5,364 kilometers, which is a 38% increase. We believe that the percentage of transportation operated by rail will increase by 5 percentage points from 15% to 20%. We believe that active exchanges between regions and the capital area will also become possible. Currently, we have some bottlenecks, and these bottlenecks will be solved with additional investments, especially the Susek-Seoul route and the Kumcheon route, as well as the route between Pyeongtaek and Osong will also be improved to reduce bottlenecks. In order to have high-speed rail between regions, we will add routes, and that means that we could have competitiveness compared to overland transportation, and we will also be able to reduce transit time within the capital area by 30 minutes. Compared to the population, we believe that the railway services can be enhanced to about 60% level, and for the high-speed rail, we would be able to increase it to 25% from the current 20%. We hope that we will be able to open the continental rail era by connecting the two Koreas. Now, last but not least, let's take a look at the environmental issues. The railway has outstanding energy efficiency. We use 1/8 of the fuel of cars and 1/12 of trucks, and so using rail is a way to maintain our environment. We can continue to develop high-tech technology for the rail in order to further enhance the efficiency of rails, and we are also making an effort to reduce particle matter within the air inside our trains and our stations. We are also preparing for the future by introducing IoT-based real-time rail thermometers as well as ultrasounds to respond to any changes in the rail itself. Our mission is to connect people, world, and the rail. So under this mission, we would like to become a safe, convenient, and trusted railway. Our service slogan is connecting hearts, you are Korail. We will continue to keep this slogan in mind as we provide our rail services to the people of Korea. The future of Korea, we hope that we will become your rail. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Park Do-ho, for your presentation. So we have heard about airports, smart mobility, and rail. We will now go to the last presentation on roads.
The presentation will be delivered by Mr. Jung Hong-jun, in charge of smart planning at the Korea Express Corporation. He's going to be discussing advancement and expansion of the expressway high-pass system. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give a presentation on the advancement and expansion of expressway high-pass system. My name is Park Jung Hong-jun. I have the prologue, 3 chapters, and the epilogue. As part of the prologue, I'd like to discuss the birth of high-pass. The expressways opened in 1968, and you can see these manned toll booths. And in 1994, the toll collection system was introduced, and this is currently being operated. And in 2007, finally, by using wireless communication technology, high-pass was implemented all across the nation. Since the introduction of high-pass, it has been growing rapidly. First of all, let's take a look at the quantitative growth. In just 3 years, the usage rate went to 50%. In 10 years, went up to 80%. And we were able to see the decline in the traffic accidents near toll gates from 190 accidents per year to 140 accidents per year. Now you can see the increase in the toll gate passing speed. There have been qualitative achievements as well. We were included in Korea's top 100 brands for 5 consecutive years, and we were actually number 1 in the top 10 expressway news lists. So high-pass has become a representative brand for Korea Express Corporation, and it is now applied to parking and other services. There are growing expectations about the high-pass system, and let's take a look at the video. There is this black car that is coming in, and this was a very dangerous situation. When you look at the complaints about the high-pass system, there were many cars who are switching lanes shiftily, and because of this, the number of car accidents has increased to almost 200 per year for the past 5 years. Now let's take a look at the Seoul toll gate. There are high-pass lanes in the middle, and regardless of whether the drivers have the card or not, there will be sensors that will detect the cars, but these services have not been implemented nationwide. And there should be measures put in place to prevent such accidents from happening. In short, what the users are expecting is that they're not happy with the narrow lane width, and there are risks of car accidents, and drivers feel uneasy going through these high-pass lanes. In order to address these concerns, we've decided to work with the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. The problem was that the original road or the original land width was maintained, and it was only 3 meters. And as a result, the speed limit had to be 30 kilometers per hour, but on average, drivers are passing through the lanes at 60 kilometers per hour. And sometimes cars that have the high pass and those that don't have are mixing in switching lanes, and this could cause accidents. Since 2010, the ORT was introduced in New Hampshire, and in Korea in 2016, the one tolling system was introduced for public-private expressways, and we were able to find a solution to offer multi-lane high-pass system that is faster, safer, and more convenient. So what is the multi-lane high pass? It is a system that allows users to pass at their traveling speed in a way that is less stressful and has no safety issues. Now let's compare between the two. How can we expand the lane width? The lane width was because we were able to utilize this 2-meter divider. Traditionally, we had these dividers that were 2 meters wide, but by eliminating the divider, we were able to secure more space for each lane. The first pilot implementation was done at a toll gate that had low traffic. For instance, Gangneung and Daegwallyeong toll gates were good sites for testing, and as a result, we were able to see improvements. The lane width was much wider, and the passing speed was increased from 30 kilometers per hour to 50 kilometers per hour. The initial assessment of the multi-lane high pass was quite positive because there was no need for lane width adjustment, and there was no need for drivers to slow down as they were passing through the toll gate. However, we didn't stop here. We wanted to improve even further, so we listened carefully to the feedback from the drivers. And many drivers said that they would like to be able to use this more in more places, and they felt that they were feeling safe, but they wished that the lanes would be even wider. Now, we decided to form an industry, university, and research joint partnership. As you can see on this map, there are these toll gates that are connecting to the largest cities, and we implemented the multi-lane high-pass system. In addition, we have made further improvement by using technology. As you can see here, previously it was a one-type 2-lane system, but now with just one type it can cover 3 lanes. Or we can have 2 types that will each cover 2 lanes. Also, we wanted to increase the passing speed. As for the interchange type, the limit would be 50 kilometers, and for the main line type, the speed limit is now increased to 80 kilometers per hour. And there were some concerns that the lane width was not wide enough. As you can see on the screen, we made a further improvement by minimizing the safety wall. We made these safety walls slimmer so that we can secure more room for each lane. These efforts have been reported in 130 reports from various news medias, and there were special features about this. But once again, we were very happy that the drivers were quite satisfied. I've been driving this express bus for 15 years, and now I am able to pass through the toll gate really quickly. So I'd like to thank the Korea Express Corporation for their improvement, and I feel very happy, and overall the speed is really high. Whenever I was going through the toll gate, I felt uneasy, but not anymore. I hope that I can use this all across the nation. But we're not content yet. And we did a survey with more than 500 people, and we did the structural equation model analysis based on the survey. And we were able to see that visibility, safety were the key issues, as well as quickness. And we also conducted a focus group interview with 10 bus drivers that were frequently using the expressways. By reflecting on these feedback and to address the concerns, we've decided to include the design team as part of our partnership. So we tried many different ideas. First of all, in order to improve visibility and safety, LED and other fixtures are introduced, and VMS and other guideposts were included. But when it comes to the speed, we're going to maintain the current speed limits for the safety of the drivers. And now, at the East Seoul toll gate, we now have the 4-lane one-type system. And this, as you can see, means that there's one single system or one single type that covers all 4 lanes. In addition, as for the first circulation line in Seoul metropolitan area, we are currently constructing the multi-lane high-pass system at the Seongnam toll gate. We were able to enhance the design features. Now, I'd like to show you a short video of how things have changed after we implemented the multi-lane high-pass system. As you can see, the multi-lane high-pass system is very effective in terms of efficiency and publicity improvement. Now, drivers are able to pass through the toll gate at the current traveling speed because the main line speed limit is 80 kilometers per hour, and for interchange is 50 kilometers per hour. And thanks to the improvement in the speed, overall the traffic flow has become better. In addition, there has been a decline in the traffic accidents near the toll gates, thus improving the safety. And overall, the satisfaction level has increased. In the past, it was 3.18 points, but now it's 4.1 points. From the operator's perspective, the amount of vehicles per lane was 1,100 previously, but now we can process more than 1,800 vehicles per hour, so there was a 64% increase. In addition, even though the traffic volume increases, we are able to pass through the more vehicles, therefore we don't need to expand our lanes. But we will not stop here. We will continue to work hard to improve the convenience of the drivers. We are collaborating with the navigation operators. So in the navigation program, all the information about the speed limit and the number of lanes and high-pass lanes will be indicated very clearly. So there's no end to our efforts to satisfy the Korean drivers. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. That was a presentation by Mr. Chung Hong-jun from the Korea Express Corporation.
So we have heard 4 presentations concerning Korea's transportation infrastructure, We would like to invite President Oh Jae-hak to the stage once again, along with the 4 presenters and the 4 designated discussants for the discussion portion of this session. We have with us Mr. Kim Baek-jae of the International Air Transport Association, Dr. Lee Ju-yeon of the Korea National University of Transportation, Mr. Nam Kung-sung of the Korea Express Corporation, and Mr. Lee Chang-gi of the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transportation. This session will be moderated by President Oh Jae-hak.
I would like to also invite the presenters to be up on the stage. Once again, I'm Oh Jae-hak, President of the Korea Transport Institute. We have about 30 minutes for the discussion. We're discussing infrastructure, transportation infrastructure in Korea. Let's begin the panel discussion. As the presenters were already introduced, I would like to introduce to you our panel discussants. First of all, we have Kim Baek-jae from the International Air Transport Association, Dr. Lee Ju-yeon from the Korea National University of Transportation, Mr. Nam Kung-sung from the Korea Express Corporation in the Division of ICT Convergence Research. Next, Lee Chang-gi from the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. We heard the 4 presentations. As you can see, when it comes to transportation infrastructure and transportation services, they are crucial for economic development, and also they are very important for the quality of life of the citizens. So these are the fundamental services that are provided for our society. Therefore, transportation infrastructure is closely related to economic development of a nation. And today in the session, we heard the presentations on Incheon International Airport, smart mobility, high-speed railway, and expressway. We were able to see that these areas have improved dramatically, thus showcasing the strength of transportation infrastructure in Korea. And today, we are holding the session as part of the Global Korea Convention 2020, and the keyword here is international cooperation and international solidarity. And these were the keywords emphasized again and again in the opening ceremony as well. We want to pursue international cooperation and promote international solidarity in many different fields. So in this regard, if possible, I'd like to ask the discussants to make discussions on how we can improve our transportation structure and what lessons we can share with the rest of the world, and how we can share our experiences of developing the transportation infrastructure with other countries so that we can promote international cooperation and solidarity. This may not be an easy topic to discuss in a short period of time, but this is something that I would like to ask you to cover in your discussion as well. I'm going to invite the 4 designated discussants in the order that I introduced to you. And then if there's time, then I will also give each presenter a couple of minutes for further discussion. And if we still have some time left, then we will be able to entertain questions or comments from the floor. First, Incheon International Airport. From the global cooperation perspective, the most proud and the most successful transportation infrastructure will be the Incheon International Airport, which was opened in 2001, so it's been 20 years.
들어오는 이제 가장 그 입국은 관문이잖아요.
So it is the gateway into our country, and it feels very different. And many people who actually come through the Incheon International Airport wish to have such an airport in their own countries. So, Director Kim, because of COVID-19, airports are going through various difficulties, and the Incheon International Airport are making great efforts on this front as well. So, Director Kim, could you take this opportunity to talk about the strengths of Incheon International Airport and possible changes and responses to COVID-19? Just 5 minutes, please. Yes, pleased to meet you. Thank you very much for this invitation. As you have heard through the presentation, the Incheon International Airport is the gateway into our country, and they have been able to quickly respond to the COVID-19 situation. I'm personally very grateful. And as the director of the International Air Transport Association, we are very grateful. Airports are used by passengers, but they are also used by airline companies. Without airline companies, airports cannot exist. But the Incheon International Airport is a large facility that is well maintained and that is loved by airline companies. Concerning services and figures, many people are well aware of the high evaluation of the airport. Of course, competition is becoming more fierce because of large airports being built in the vicinity of Incheon. But if we are able to move ahead preemptively concerning disease control, I think we would continue to have a competitive edge. COVID-19 has created changes in the airline industry, and I'm sure that many people are concerned about airline companies and airports. Well, actually, Incheon International Airport is well prepared, and the airline companies, they are going through difficulties, but they are coming up with various measures to overcome the situation. For example, switching to freight or adding various services. And I think in Korea, the airline companies have gone through the most difficult times, and they are on the way to recovery. Having said that, what I would like to mention is that the airline industry is impacted heavily by external measures. Ever since the 9/11 terrorist attack, security was a new concept that was added. Before 9/11, I'm sure that you don't have any experience of stringent security measures. But because we have had these stringent measures for a very long time, you're no longer aware of them. I think with COVID-19, we will be adding another layer of biosecurity. So the airports need to be used as a safe environment, and the passengers, they need to be able to safely board airplanes going through the airport. In order to do that, we need to be well prepared in terms of facility. As we have heard from the presentation, we could have screening of various diseases at the airport itself, and I believe that that is very cutting edge. And next year, we believe that we will see a recovery of international routes, and we hope that this facility will be opened at the airport before that. Another important point is the digital passport that you just mentioned that has information about health. Well, passports are not used just in a single country, but it has to be universally accepted in countries around the world. And so rather than having this digital health passport just in Korea, we hope that we will be able to create a global solution that will be welcomed and accepted by other countries outside of Korea. Within the Incheon International Airport, transit is well managed, and A high number of transit passengers means that we can become the hub connecting the West and East. I don't think you mentioned this in the presentation, but if we actually have such screening facilities within the transit facility, of course, screening would be done at departure. But if we could actually add a screening facility for transit passengers, it could be a double layer of checking. And also, there could be passengers who did not have symptoms at departure, but are experiencing symptoms at transit. So biosecurity is a new word that we have heard through the discussion. Well, Ms. Hong Se-yeon is making great efforts at the Incheon International Airport for disease control. We will not go back to you. We will go through all of the discussants first before we get back to you. So Incheon International Airport is a world-renowned airport, and as K disease control is well recognized around the world, we hope that it will also be true for your airport. We hope that the Incheon International Airport proves to be an airport that is strong against infective diseases. Let us go on to the second discussant.
So you're going to make discussions on high-speed railway. When we get on the high-speed railway, foreigners would often ask me, why is there any conductor that is checking whether you have tickets or not? But they actually do that. But you may not notice that, but these conductors or these people would walk along the aisle to check if you have tickets or not by using an online application. Also, as we have this high-speed railway, we have been developing train car technology and railway technology. And there was a presentation by Korail president of how the Korail is able to export its technology to other countries. That was very impressive. And it shows that high-speed railway service has been improving dramatically, and we have a long history. So Dr. Lee, would you like to comment on how we can promote international cooperation utilizing the high-speed rail service? There was a very good presentation by Park Do-ho from Korail. Thank you very much for that presentation. There was a lot of content inside the presentation, and I think because of this Global Korea Convention 2020, the presentation was about strength of the high-speed railway in Korea as well as the history.
So we have been able to hear an overview of Korea's rail. Just like our moderator has mentioned, I have a similar perspective, and I would like to present a slightly different perspective to the same contents by the presenter. Well, if we take a look at the Korea high-speed railway, there are three strengths. First, the hardware know-how. We have a strength in the know-how for hardware. Second is the software aspect, which is the operation of the rail itself. And third, as we have seen in the title of the presentation, the rail is then linked to the local development. And so we believe that these 3 points are the strengths that we have in railway. So I would like to take this opportunity to talk about these 3 aspects. For the high-speed railway, we have know-how concerning hardware. And as you're well aware, ever since 2004, we have had the Gyeongbu high-speed railway in operation, and that was the 5th high-speed railway that went into operation in the world. So we are quite advanced in terms of high-speed railway, and so we started our services quite early. Recently, we have seen services open in China, and we see that they are quickly expanding the length and coverage of their rail, but in terms of reviewing the actual operations, I think we were able to move quite quickly. Second, Ever since the 80s, we have conducted design and construction for the last 2 to 3 decades, and that really is a strength that we have. Of course, we opened services in 2004 for high-speed railways, but the feasibility study started in the 80s. So in the 80s, we started to design the concepts, and then we started to add the detailed design and construction after that. So it took over 2 decades to actually launch the service of the high-speed railway. And so in that process, we were able to accumulate know-how. And so the know-how covers also design and construction. And that's a strength that our country has. Concerning the hardware, there's one more point that I would like to make. In Korea, we have been able to develop the trains themselves and export the trains. In 2004, when we first opened the service for Gyeongbuk High-Speed Railway, the trains themselves were imported from France, but we have conducted development of technology ever since then, and by doing so, we have been able to develop our trains and export them overseas. And so, the construction of high-speed railway, the trains themselves, and the operation can create a full package to export high-speed railway systems to countries around the world. Second, concerning the software, as you're well aware, when we first started our services in 2004, actually, one person in Korea would ride on the average 115 kilometers per year. That actually increased by threefold to about 430 kilometers per person per year. We have seen a better awareness of high-speed railway among the people, and we also have very scientific and systematic operation of high-speed railway based on the know-how of Korail. As you have also heard in the presentation, the on-time operation is close to 100%, and we have been able to create safe, accurate, and efficient operation of trains, which led to the convenient use of these trains, and that is why we have become a powerhouse in the operation of rail. The last part that I would like to emphasize is that railways lay down the foundation for local development. As I have mentioned before, based on the hardware and software know-how, we have been able to grow our services, but the Korea Transportation Institute has conducted the socio-economic changes triggered by railways for the last 10 years. According to the research results, ever since the opening of high-speed railways, we have seen increases in population in the areas in the vicinity of the stations, and we have also seen changes in the industrial structure. The people who live in the station areas believe that there has been increase in interregional exchanges, and there has also been a higher recognition of the area surrounding the station as an area with high traffic and high population. In the last 5 to 6 years, when we have conducted research, we did not see any dramatic changes, but because it's been 15 years since we opened our high-speed railway services, we are able to see such tangible changes. For countries around the world that are pondering over whether they should construct high-speed railways, we are able to show with evidence that high-speed railways are contributing to local development and the overall national economy. And to take this a step further, we also have know-how concerning the development of the area surrounding high-speed railway stations, and this is know-how that we can also share with the global community. Well, I think I have just reclassified the contents that the presenter has already presented. Yes, Dr. Lee Ju-yeon, she is working at the Korea Transport Institute, but I think you can become an honorary ambassador for Korail because you have spoken very well about Korail. KTX and SRX are two high-speed rail services, are safe, and they are being trusted by the people, and they have taken root in our society as a safe transportation mode, and I think that's a great result.
Now let's have a discussion on the expressways in Korea. The next designated discussant is Mr. Namgung Sung from the Korea Express Corporation. In the late 1960s, expressways were built to promote economic development of Korea. So this was indeed the beginning of the rapid industrialization. That was when we only had 250,000 vehicles in the country, where we now have millions of cars on the road. And so the construction of the expressway was crucial in promoting economic development. And now we have a huge network of expressways and highways. And there was a presentation about the high-pass system. I'd like to ask Mr. Namgung Sung to give an overview of the expressway situations in Korea and what we can do to promote international cooperation in this sector. Hello, as introduced, I am Namgung Sung. I really enjoyed all four presentations. There's a lot that I want to talk about, but given the limited time, I'm going to focus on a couple of points. As President Oh Jae-hak mentioned, Korea has advanced rapidly. As you may or may not know, I looked at the old statistics. In the past, we had only a small number of vehicles, but there was 480 times increase in the number of vehicles in such a short period of time. And without considering the population, Korea is among the 15 countries that have more than 20 million vehicles. So this is quite amazing. Now, I would like to tell you how Korea is viewed globally. For the past 4 years, there have been a PIAC gathering of experts in automobile industry, and for the past 4 years, they were discussing how to offer expressway systems for developing countries that are cost efficient. And there were many insights in this report. And first of all, I was able to see that Korea is a very excellent test site. What the developing countries need is to test their ideas in their local situations, rather than just adopting a successful case. They want to see how their ideas may pan out by experimenting them in the Korean situation. Korea has been building the high-pass system and many other road infrastructure, and they may not be applicable to the developing world. This means that the kind of future that we're envisioning is not, it may not be applicable to these countries. So in that sense, we took a look at the high-pass system in Korea, and what direction do we need to take in further promoting the high-pass system. People use high-pass system when they enter and exit the toll road, but it may not end there. There is more significance and meaning. And I'd like to share with you some statistics. Currently, we have about 4,000 kilometers of expressway, but what we need to pay attention to is the amount of transactions or volume, about 4 trillion won of tolls. And also there are huge revenues or sales happening, which is about 4 trillion won at the recreation and rest areas. So a total of 8 trillion won of transaction takes place along the expressway. And what does that mean? Recently, you may know all these very simple and easy payment systems on the smartphones. Do you pay fees for these transactions? They actually earn profit from the data by collecting data on what people want and what people pay for and so on. So by offering extreme convenience, these service providers collect data from us. Therefore, the high-pass system can be viewed from this perspective. It's not just about providing convenience per se, but we can collect data, very meaningful data from this toll information. In other words, 8 trillion won of transaction happens along the expressway, and we can utilize this data. So by combining this with technology, we can create a lot of value. And when we connect this to the fintech technology, this will be able to contribute to improving the policies and the overall infrastructure. And secondly, we want to be able to monetize these data. There's nothing free. If there's a free service, there's always something in return that you need to pay. If we can monetize data from the toll gates, then we can actually lower the toll amounts. In the largest cities, there are short expressways that are less than 25 kilometers. They can become free expressways if we can monetize and get some value from the data that we collect from the high-pass system. So this is something that we also need to pay attention to. And finally, I'd like to talk about communication aspect. In 2020, this year, this is something that I actually designed and reported on this plan. Currently, we still have some automated toll gates, but I hope that all these toll gates will be high-pass system. Technology is available, but there are other issues related to jobs that may be lost, and also some private information, personal information issue. Yes, can you be brief? Thank you. In the 5G network, how can we make the transition for the high-pass system to a better network system? And this is something that we need to also pay attention to. Thank you very much for your comments. I hope that the Korea Express Corporation will apply the smart tolling system as soon as possible. Finally, I'd like to invite Director Lee Chang-gi from the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. I'm sorry that I cannot give you a lot of time, but please go ahead. Hello. I am Director of the Division of Advanced Automobile Division, not Advanced Transportation, but I'm going to cover that as well. There was a presentation about smart mobility, and what was presented there is very much related to what I am doing at the ministry. I am dealing with hydrogen vehicles and autonomous driving and smart mobility. In the future, how will transportation change? I believe that there are 3 main trends. First of all, it will become more automated. Now, based on AI and big data, mobility will be provided in an automated manner. And the second trend is a transition in energy, and there will be decarbonization of the transportation sector. There will be EVs and hydrogen vehicles away from combustion engines. The third trend is personalized transportation or customized mobility. This means that individuals will be able to enjoy customized mobility services. Now, the mobility law and other relevant laws will be introduced because we need to support personalized mobility. Now, in this transition, how can we manage the entire change? This is something that we need to pay attention to as we want to make a successful transition to the future mobility. And so in that sense, as Mr. Chung mentioned, we need to be able to utilize telecommunications technology, but at the same time, we also need to manage personal information carefully. These are new concerns that are arising in the transportation sector. In the past, we were just mainly focusing on providing infrastructure and the transportation services, but now these different parts are being connected. So the CITS means that there will be information exchanges or data exchanges between the road and the surrounding infrastructure and also with the vehicles. And how can we ensure connectivity of all these different parts of the infrastructure? And in doing so, how can we carefully manage personal information and at the same time create value from the data? So these are the kinds of topics that we need to discuss in the transportation sector. And going forward, I believe that the infrastructure will become even more important. And depending on the infrastructure, transportation services may vary. For instance, if you want to sell cars in Japan, then you have to design your cars to befit the infrastructure in Japan. Likewise, mobility and transportation seems to be dependent on the infrastructure. So there are many decisions that we need to make in the future. And I hope that all of the stakeholders will discuss these important topics together. Now we have fewer references that we can learn from because we are becoming a leader in the transportation sector. So I hope that the experts will continue to provide us with insights. And rather than waiting for other people to try new ideas first, I think we need to be more like a pioneer and test different ideas so that we can further improve our transportation system. Thank you.
Well, originally we had planned to go back to the presenters for 1 or 2 minutes, but we have not been able to save enough time to go back to the presenters. Let me try and summarize the session. Well, Korea is a well-known automotive manufacturer, and we also have world-class infrastructure. Added to that, we also have transportation services that are world-class, including airports and railways. So in a short amount of time, the overall ecosystem, including infrastructure, transportation service, and automotive manufacturing, we have been able to create a virtuous cycle within the ecosystem. We don't see many examples of that around the world. And so that is why many countries wish to learn about the growth of our transportation ecosystem. With the advent of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, we will see the evolution of transportation technologies. As you're well aware, the Republic of Korea has announced the Korean New Deal as a new big picture for the country. The automotive industry, transportation services, and infrastructure, we hope, will be able to take the next leap forward using the Green New Deal as a turning point. We look forward to joining hands from experts from both home and abroad so that we can evolve the industry according to the Fourth Industrial Revolution, so that we can picture the evolution of mobility services. We had this session to discuss Korea's transportation infrastructure. We will bring the session to a close. Thank you very much to our presenters, discussants, our participants, our viewers, as well as NCR, the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, the Korea Transport Institute, and the Incheon International Airport Corporation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to President Oh Jae-hak for moderating the discussion session, and thank you to our 4 presenters and 4 discussants. Thank you very much for joining us on site as well as our viewers on our online platform. We hope that The session proved to be informative. This brings us to the end of the session on Korea's transportation infrastructure. The session will continue to be available on YouTube channels. Please search for Global Korea Convention Crystal B. Thank you very much.